بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا واجعل ما نتعلمه حجة لنا لا حجة علينا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. We begin as always with the praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by sending salutations upon the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, upon his family and upon his companions. And we begin by asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to teach us what benefits us and to benefit us with what He teaches us, and to make what we learn an evidence that will stand and be a witness for us on the Day of Judgment, and not something that is going to be a witness against us on the Day of Judgment. Because all of the knowledge that we gain is going to be divided on the Day of Judgment into two things. Those things that are going to be a witness for us, and those things that are going to stand against us. What is going to stand for us is the beneficial knowledge that we acted upon, and what is going to stand against us is the knowledge that has no benefit and the beneficial knowledge that we didn't act upon. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala right at the very beginning of this series to make this knowledge beneficial knowledge that we put into practice. And if there's anything which you should know about the book Al-Arba'in by Al-Imam Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, it is that this is a very, very practical book. This is a book that you will need in every single day of your life. And there isn't going to be a day that goes by that you don't implement these ahadith. And in fact, you're going to find that insha'Allah, there won't have been a day in your practicing life as a practicing Muslim that you haven't needed these hadith. But insha'Allah, by studying them, you're going to be even more insha'Allah clear about them and be able to put them into practice and to use them even more. And we also need to bear in mind that putting them into practice doesn't just mean us ourselves. We learn, we start to practice it ourselves, and we use these ahadith as a means to call people to Islam. In fact, this explanation of the ahadith that I'm going to give to you today, and inshallah throughout this series of lectures, is actually particularly beloved to me because it's from the explanation of my Shaykh, and indeed our Shaykh, Shaykh Al-Allama Abdul Muhsin Al-Abbad Hafidhahullah Ta'ala. And the Shaykh, I studied from him for a number of years, and he has this written explanation of Al-Arba'in An-Nawawiyya Hafidhahullah Ta'ala. And this was further explained by his son, our Shaykh Abdul Razzaq Al-Abbad Hafidhahullah Ta'ala, who explained this in an audio tape commenting on his father's work. And so one of the things that Shaykh Abdul Razzaq mentioned in his explanation, and I think this is particularly relevant, is that he said, there is no problem that exists in your community. There is no issue that you are suffering from in your community that cannot be fixed by the 40 hadith of Al-Imam Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala. In fact, there is no da'wah that you will give, and there is no lesson that you will teach that does not include the principles that you will learn in these 40 hadith, or slightly more than that, of Al-Imam Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala. So this is really a very, very important book. Al-Imam Nawawi, when he wrote this book, he commented on one of the reasons, or he commented on some of the history behind the book. And he said, rahimahullah ta'ala, as a means of clarification to people, that I did not write this book because of the weak hadith that are narrated about the virtue of 40 hadith. i.e. my writing of this book was not out of a mistake in following a weak hadith which has been narrated from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that there is a virtue for memorizing 40 hadith, and whoever memorizes 40 hadith will get such and such or such and such. This hadith is not correct from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But Imam Nawawi rahimahullah, he said, I wrote this book because of all of the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which encourage us to teach and to pass on the ahadith. From the greatest of those hadith is a hadith which is mutawatir, a hadith which has been narrated by so many companions that it is impossible for there to be in it any mistake or any if you like, any error or any either deliberate or sort of whether deliberate or whether accidental. There can't be any error in it because it's narrated by so many people, and it was narrated by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his khutbah on the day of the slaughter of the animals on the day of Hajj in the Masjid, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam spoke to the people and he said, Naddarallahu imra'an, may Allah brighten the face of a person. Sami'a maqalati, he listens to what I say. Fawa'aha, so he completely memorizes it and he has it in his heart and he understands it. Fa'addaha kama sami', and he relays it to the people just as he heard it from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And there are various different wordings of the hadith, and from the wordings of the hadith is the statement of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, فَرُبَّ حَامِلِ فِقْهٍ غَيْرُ فَقِيهٍ وَرُبَّ حَامِلِ فِقْهٍ إِلَى مَنْ هُوَ أَفْقَهُ مِنْ أو كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم. Perhaps a person is carrying knowledge when he's not faqih, he doesn't understand the weight and the value of what he's carrying, or he doesn't fully realize the weight of what he's carrying. And perhaps a person carries knowledge to someone who has more understanding than he does. So this hadith is a dua of the Prophet ﷺ to make the face bright of the one who listens to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ and narrates them to the people just like he heard them. Because perhaps a person who does so, he himself, perhaps he is not a great alim, perhaps he is not a great scholar of Islam, but perhaps he carries this hadith to a person who really understands it and implements it, and that person makes a huge difference in his community. So the Imam Nawawi said, it is these ahadith, this is the reason why I collected it. And then he mentioned a number of people, a number of great scholars in Islam who prior to him had written about 40 hadith, a book of 40 hadith. But all of the prior or the previous efforts that had been done before Al-Imam Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala had been done in specific areas of Islam. The 40 virtues of La ilaha illallah, 40 ahadith of jihad, 40 ahadith relating to this, 40 ahadith relating to that. Al-Imam Nawawi said, and this was he mentioned the greatness of their intent. He said, this is a fantastic thing they did. May Allah be pleased with the one who had this intention. But I have a greater purpose behind my 40 hadith. He said, it's not just the 40 hadith of jihad, 40 hadith of La ilaha illallah, 40 hadith of the virtues of fasting, 40 hadith of the virtues of dua. He said, may Allah be pleased with the one who did it for this reason. But me, I have a reason which is more important than this. And that is to gather 40 hadith from Jawami'ul Kalim, from those hadith which are, the words are very, very few, but the meanings are vast. And Jawami'ul Kalim, it means that the Prophet ﷺ, he spoke with very few words, 3 or 4 words in a hadith, or 10 words, or 20 words, very, very few words. But those words contain meanings that books and volumes have been written about them. This is what we mean by Jawami'ul Kalim. And this is from the miracles of the Prophet ﷺ. that he could say 2 or 3 words, and those 2 or 3 words could carry the weight of an entire book, an entire volume. And yet he would only say a few words. He would only say a handful of words. And Imam Nawawi mentioned these are the ahadith which are mentioned by the scholars as being the ahadith that the whole religion of Islam rests upon them, or that every other hadith in Islam returns back to them, or the ahadith that the scholars said this hadith is a third of your religion, or a half of your religion, or a quarter of your religion. There are various ahadith that a scholar would comment on it and say this hadith is a third of your religion, or a scholar would comment on it and say this hadith is half of your religion, or a scholar would comment on it and say this hadith is a quarter of your religion. Meaning that if you were to gather every single hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, you could broadly classify them under the shade of 3 or 4 hadith. A third of your religion, a quarter of your religion. Now, not all of the scholars agreed on which of these 3 hadith makes up the third, or which of the 4 represent the quarter. Al-Imam Nawawi gathered all of the ahadith which have been said about them. This is a third of your religion, or this is a quarter of your religion, or this hadith represents the whole of your religion, or all of Islam is contained within this hadith, or the hadith which people say the religion of Islam is built upon it, or they say that all of Islam is found within this hadith, or all of Islam comes back to this hadith. Whenever Al-Imam Nawawi found a great scholar of Islam make a comment like this, these are the ahadith that he included within his 40 ahadith. And so this is the virtue of these 40. And like Shaykh Abdul Razzaq Hafidhahullah said, every problem in your community can be solved by the knowledge that is contained within these hadith. Not just in your practice, but in your da'wah. No longer are you going to be stuck to give a proof for something. Somebody comes in and he starts to do a bid'ah in the masjid, an innovation in the masjid. You're not going to be stuck anymore for a way to explain to him that this is not allowed in Islam. Because every single bid'ah in Islam has been refuted and spoken about within these ahadith. You're not going to find a new Muslim or a non-Muslim that you need to explain something about Islam to and you don't have a proof for it, because you have these 40 ahadith or 40 plus ahadith. So it's an extremely important book. And like Al-Imam Nawawi said, many previous people have written about this, but his decision was not 40 hadith of aqeedah, 40 hadith of worship, 40 hadith on marriage, 40 hadith on good character. His were 40 hadith on the fundamentals of Islam. The whole of Islam resides within these ahadith. On top of that, you can see the virtue of the book in the fact that this book, there is almost no scholar in the world except that when a new student comes to him and says, Shaykh, recommend me a book in hadith, he says, begin with the 40 hadith of Al-Imam Nawawi. Almost every single curriculum, every single school syllabus, every single scholar who teaches books to students, they recommend this as the first book that you begin with. And this is one of the books about which the ulama say there was written acceptance in the whole ummah for it. As in the fact that there are a number of books whereby you will not find someone from the easternmost part of the where Muslims live to the west throughout the history of Islam who did not love this book and recommend it to his students. And you will not find a student from the students of knowledge except that this book is at the very beginning and the most important of his beginning to learn. And you will not find a serious student who really can call himself a student of knowledge except that he's memorized these ahadith. This book really is one of those books that has been given acceptance by Allah on the earth. Like Sahih al-Bukhari. Even you go to the deviant sects and the deviant groups and they still teach Sahih al-Bukhari. Sahih al-Bukhari has acceptance in the whole Muslim ummah. And those people who don't accept it, those are those who have literally gone completely outside of Islam. Likewise, the 40 hadith of Imam Nawawi rahimahullah are from those ahadith which have been given acceptance across the whole ummah. Like his book Riyadh as-Salihin, like this book Al-Arba'in, that these books have been given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala acceptance on the earth. So every single scholar, every single student loves this book. There is no madhab, there is no maslak, there is no way inside of Islam that people don't teach this book. And the first and the foremost and the people at the front of this are the people of the Sunnah, the people who are upon the Aqidah of the Salaf al-Salih. They are the first people who learn and teach and pass on the knowledge in this book, because they are the ones who understand the value of what it contains. Not like those people who say, and they narrate the hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha in this book, that the one who innovates in this religion something that is not from it, it will not be accepted from them, and they themselves in the very sitting are innovating. Those are those people who Allah Azza wa Jalla has put a lock on their hearts, and a seal over their hearts, and a cover over their eyes, that they are narrating the very hadith that is the essence of the sunnah and the hadith which Imam Ahmad said is a third of your religion. And they themselves are innovating in the gathering that they are doing. So the people of the sunnah, we don't just read these ahadith and let them pass over our heads. We read them, we implement them, and we call people to practice them, and then we have patience over what happens to us when we do so. So this is also a very important part of the book. The only other thing I want to mention in introduction to the book, bearing in mind the time, is the number of ahadith that we will be studying and the number of ahadith that are in the book. Al-Imam Nawawi called it this book Al-Arba'un or Al-Arba'in, which means 40. But we have a feature of the Arabic language, which is that you can speak in vague terms, or you can speak in a way that you are giving, you're sort of ignoring the remainder. And the reason I mentioned this is there are actually 42 hadith in this book. And Al-Imam Nawawi knew that there were 42. It's not that he wrote the title and then added 2 at the end. He knew that there were 42, but a feature of the Arabic language is that you can say 40 and mean 42 or 43 or 44. And that is just a feature of the eloquence of Arabic, and it comes even in statements of the companions, specifically the statement of Anas, and I think we covered this in the previous lecture regarding how long the Prophet ﷺ spent in Makkah and how long the Prophet ﷺ spent in Medina when we did Shama'il and Nabi ﷺ. And if I'm not mistaken, from the top of my head, it was the hadith of Anas radiallahu an, in which he said the Prophet ﷺ spent 10 years in Makkah and 10 years in Medina, missing out 3 years in Makkah, because this is a feature of the Arabic language. The same reason Al-Imam Nawawi called it the 40, and he didn't call it the 42. The word 40 is a nice word, it's a nice clean and simple word, rather than saying the 42 hadith of Al-Imam Nawawi. But we're not going to study 42 hadith, because it's far too easy for you guys. In fact, we're going to study 50, because along came Al-Imam Ibn Rajab rahimahullah ta'ala, and he added 8 hadith to the 42 hadith of Al-Imam Nawawi when he explained the 40 hadith of Al-Imam Nawawi in a very valuable book, Jamia al-Ulum wal-Hikam, which is probably the best and the most comprehensive explanation of the 40 hadith of Al-Imam Nawawi, and we're going to be dipping into it frequently throughout our lesson. So looking at this, Al-Imam Ibn Rajab rahimahullah, he came and he added 8 hadith to make up 50. And this 50, he said, there are 8 hadith that I feel fulfill the conditions of Al-Imam Nawawi in being a half of your religion or a third of your religion, or being based, the whole religion is based upon it, or the religion all goes back to it, or it provides a fundamental principle which is present in every single part of Islam. He mentioned 8 more that were not mentioned by Imam Nawawi, and again the ulama of Islam, they have accepted this 8 And the vast majority of books, when it has been printed, the 40 hadith, the 8 of Ibn Rajab are added in there as an extra. So we're actually going to cover 50 hadith. At this moment in time, I'm not sure whether we're going to do it in 4 sessions or 5. We have the option. We're planning originally to do it in 4. If we struggle to do that, we can always do it inshallah in 5 inshallah, and keep to the 10-10-10 plan, and just add another 10 on the end. If we manage, some hadith are very, very long and take a very long time to explain. Some are a little bit shorter. This explanation of Shaykh Abdul Muhsin, Hafidhahullah, is not a detailed explanation. I want to give you the most important points. I want to give you the most important benefits. I don't want to sit and talk about a hadith for 8 hours or 9 hours or 10 hours. I mean, just this hadith, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, there are books that are more than 1 volume in length written on this hadith alone. So we don't want to, sort of go to that extent. We want to, whenever you study a text for the first time, the ideal way to study it is just bullet points. Really simple bullet points about the hadith, a few nice little quotes, just things to give you what you really need. Then what you can do is you can come back to the 40 hadith of Imam Nawawi, for example, and you can study it from Jamia al-Ulum wal-Hikam by Ibn Rajab rahimahullah, and you can go through, and this book is about that wide in Arabic. In English it would be double, roughly 1.5 to double the size. So you're talking in English of a book that's probably 4 volumes, 3 to 4 volumes in length, and you can go through that. I don't know if it's been translated into English or not, but you can go through that in detail, and that can be like a supplement to the knowledge you've got. But you always need the bullet points. And the reason you need the bullet points is you need to know the most important stuff. And when you're giving dawah to people, you have a fraction of a second. Sometimes you just have one word, you have one sentence, and that's it. The person's going to switch off or walk away. And so you need to know the really important things, the things that are extremely valuable about these ahadith. So we're going to aim not just to mention 1-2 points and go, but to take about an hour, half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour per hadith, and then from there hopefully we'll give a good explanation of the hadith without giving you so much that you feel that you're sort of drowning in it. So 50 ahadith, and inshallah ta'ala I'm expecting the first session, I'm going to sort of extend it by about 20 minutes to cover the late start, inshallah ta'ala. So we have around about 35 minutes or so, 30 minutes or so, and inshallah ta'ala we will cover the first hadith in that time. Last thing before we start the hadith, I would expect that every single person in this room and every single sister in the sisters section will be memorizing these 50 hadith in Arabic and in English. As a leniency towards you, I'll be relatively happy if you memorize at least 10 hadith from that hadith in Arabic, but ideally I want people to memorize all of them. Now we've got at least a month's gap in between the different lessons that are coming up, so you have plenty of time. You have something like, at least, if you memorize 1 hadith every 3 days or 2 hadith a week, inshallah you won't be far away by the end of the course, having memorized them in English and Arabic. Minimum I don't expect anyone to have missed any in English. Maybe some of you who's just beginning in reading Arabic maybe struggle, so you might aim for 10 or 15 or half, 25 inshallah according to your ability. But the aim should be for everyone within this time, a little bit or double that time or triple the time, that you're going to finish memorizing that hadith in Arabic and English. English is not enough, because English is not what the Prophet ﷺ spoke, and it's not the evidence that gives people that qana'at, that gives people that certainty and that surety when you speak to them. When you read them the hadith in Arabic and then you explain it to them in English, this is better inshallah than simply reading the hadith in English to somebody. But of course, knowing what the hadith actually is more important than knowing the Arabic. So it is more important you know it in English as an understanding, but then for you to really have that power behind your da'wah and that evidence you need to be able to present it to people in Arabic as well. And these ahadith are very, very short. Okay, they are very short. And you can shorten them. The very first hadith that we read, you can stick to simply, just the first couple of lines. Like Imam al-Bukhari, rahimahullah ta'ala, summarized it and didn't mention it in the full length at the beginning of his book. So at a minimum, we want you to try to, cover a good number in Arabic, and to make the intention that within these coming months, you are going to finish it in Arabic, regardless of your level. And you're going to finish it in English. And this will help your Arabic will help your understanding of the hadith, and it will provide you with a real understanding and a real ability to give the evidence for something. Bear in mind, I don't think you're going to come across an issue in your community or in your life that you can't use this hadith or one of these ahadith as an evidence for. So it would make sense to have memorized those few in Arabic, like you memorize the 10 surahs or the 20 surahs that you need, like to have some variation in your prayer. Think of these as like the equivalent of the last 10 surahs of the Qur'an. Everybody memorizes them completely, so that you have that ability to pass that information on. And inshallah ta'ala, what we're going to do is start by reading the hadith in Arabic and reading the translation inshallah ta'ala in English, and then commenting on a few key bullet points about the hadith and maybe some key quotes regarding the hadith from the sharh of our Shaykh Abdul Muhsin Al-Abbad Hafidhahullah Ta'ala, and from the explanation of our Shaykh Abdul Razzaq Al-Abbad Hafidhahullah Ta'ala. The first hadith. عن أمير المؤمنين أبي حفص عمر ابن الخطاب رضي الله عنه أنه قال: سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول: إنما الأعمال بالنيات وإنما لكل امرئ ما نوى، فمن كانت هجرته إلى الله ورسوله فهجرته إلى الله ورسوله، ومن كانت هجرته لدنيا يصيبها أو امرأة ينكحها فهجرته إلى ما هاجر إليه. Al-Imam Nawawi rahimahullah, he comments on this further, and he says, رواه إماما المحدثين أبو عبد الله محمد بن إسماعيل ابن إبراهيم ابن المغيرة ابن بردزبة البخاري وأبو الحسين مسلم ابن الحجاج ابن مسلم القشيري النيسابوري في صحيحيهما اللذين هما أصح الكتب المصنفة. If we can memorize this bit from Imam Nawawi, that's also excellent, because he's giving you a benefit. But let's cover this in English. عن أمير المؤمنين أبي حفص عمر ابن الخطاب رضي الله عنه. From the chief of the believers, the leader of the believers, Abu Hafs Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu an, that he said, I heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam say, actions are only judged according to intentions, and everyone will have, or every person will have, what they intended. So whoever their hijrah is to Allah and His Messenger, their hijrah is to Allah and His Messenger. Their hijrah is rewarded or is considered to be to Allah and His Messenger. And whoever his hijrah is for the sake of something in the worldly life, some sort of business that he gains, or a woman that he marries, then his hijrah is considered to be for what he has made hijrah for. And Imam Nawawi said this was narrated by the two great Imams of the Muhaddithin, Abu Abdullah Muhammad ibn Ismail, Abu Abdullah Muhammad ibn Ismail ibn Ibrahim ibn al-Mughirah ibn Bardazbah al-Bukhari. So this is narrated by the two great Imams, the first one being Abu Abdullah Muhammad ibn Ismail ibn Ibrahim ibn al-Mughirah ibn Bardazbah al-Bukhari, and Abu al-Husayn Muslim ibn al-Hajjaj ibn Muslim al-Qushayri al-Naysaburi. Those are the full names of Al-Imam Bukhari and Al-Imam Muslim. In their two Sahih books, Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, the two books which are the most authentic of any two books that have been written. I.e., of all of the books that have been written, these are the two most authentic books that have been written. As for the Qur'an is the speech of Allah, and it is not created, so it's not counted amongst the books which have been authored, because the Qur'an is the speech of Allah Azza wa Jal, and it is not created, and it is not something which was authored like books are authored. It's something that Allah Azza wa Jal spoke. So as for the authored, written, created books, then these two books are the most authentic of them. First point number one that we need to know is that this hadith is reported by both Al-Bukhari and Muslim. And I'm sure all of you know that this is the very first hadith in Sahih Al-Bukhari. And one of the interesting things about this being the first hadith in Sahih Al-Bukhari is that Al-Bukhari did not put it in its own chapter. He put it within the chapter which he began his book with, talking about revelation descending upon and how revelation began to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then he began with this hadith, or a shortened version of this hadith. Many of the scholars, they spoke, why did Al-Imam Al-Bukhari mention this hadith within this chapter when this hadith seemingly does not have any relation to the chapter? Again, the short answer is that this hadith has a relation to every single topic of fiqh. Al-Imam Al-Shafi'i, rahimahullah, he has a statement saying, this hadith enters within 70 or falls within 70 topics of fiqh, and it is a third of your religion. This hadith falls within 70 chapters of fiqh, 70 chapters of fiqh, and it is a third of the religion of Islam. What does Imam Al-Shafi'i mean that this hadith falls within 70 chapters of fiqh? He doesn't mean exactly 70, but he means that it falls within many chapters of fiqh. I.e., every chapter of fiqh, wudu, salah, nikah, buying and selling, divorce, every single, you name a chapter of fiqh, you name any chapter from the chapters of fiqh, any topic from the topics of fiqh, and you will find that this hadith is the first and the most relevant hadith in the chapter. Because every single thing in Islam begins with your intention, and it is a third of your religion. So this is why Al-Imam Al-Bukhari mentions this hadith as the first hadith in Sahih Al-Bukhari. Yes, it has no relation to the descending of the revelation to the Prophet ﷺ and how that began, except that every single act that a Muslim does begins with intention. And it's like Al-Imam Al-Bukhari is saying that every single thing that I do and every single thing you do, and you reading this book and me writing this book, is built upon our intention. This is why he mentioned it right at the beginning. And we're going to hear in a moment when we come to the second hadith that Imam Muslim began with a different hadith, his Sahih, but Imam Al-Bukhari, he began with this. And he was not the first person to begin with this. Many scholars preceded him who began their books with this hadith. In fact, many scholars who began their books with the same two hadith Al-Imam Nawawi begins his 40 hadith with. So it's very important. We see this is narrated by Al-Imam Al-Bukhari at the very beginning of his book. And at this point, it's worth noting that there is a particular strangeness in this hadith from a hadith point of view. And that is that this hadith is what we call gharib. It's a hadith that is narrated by only one companion. And from that companion, only one tabi'i. And from that tabi'i, only one person, and so on, and then it spreads out after that. So Sheikh Abdul Muhsin, he says, وَقَدْ تَفَرَّدَ بِرِوَايَتِهِ عَنْ عُمَرْ الْقَمَةِ ibn Waqqas al-Laythi. So the only person who narrated this hadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was Umar. And the only person who narrated this from Umar was Alqamah ibn Waqqas al-Laythi. And the only person who narrated this from Alqamah was Muhammad ibn Ibrahim at-Taymi. And the only person who narrated this from Muhammad ibn Ibrahim at-Taymi was Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Ansari, rahimallahu al-Jami'. May Allah have mercy on all of them. And then from Yahya, many people took it from the Imam of Hadith, Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Ansari, rahimahullah ta'ala. So this has a strangeness in it. And one of the strange things is that Al-Imam al-Bukhari began his book of hadith with a hadith of this nature, and he concluded it with the same kind of hadith. Kalimatan, this hadith, Kalimatan Habibatan ila Rahman, that this hadith of two words that are beloved to Ar-Rahman, that are light on the tongue and that are heavy on the scales. And this hadith at the end of Sahih al-Bukhari is also of this nature. It's also a hadith that has one person narrating from one person, and then later on it ends up spreading out. This is important for us for a number of reasons. It's important for us, especially with regard to Sahih al-Bukhari, for two reasons. The first one is it is an evidence against those people who refuse to accept the ahadith which are ahad, the ahadith which are narrated without multiple chains. And we don't want to get too much into this, but there is a group of innovators and an innovated sect, and a group of innovated sects who refuse to accept to one degree or another ahadith that are narrated in this way. So Al-Imam al-Bukhari, it's like he's delivering them a slap in the face, a metaphorical slap in the face. He's saying to them that you people don't accept the ahadith that are narrated in this way, and I am beginning the most authentic book on the face of this earth after the book of Allah Azza wa Jal with a hadith like this, and I'm concluding it with a hadith like this. On top of this, it's especially important because Al-Imam al-Bukhari, and subhanAllah, this is the fiqh of Al-Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah, he began with the beginning and he ended with the end. He began by talking about the very thing that begins every act of worship, and he concluded his book with the end of the acts of worship, when the acts of worship are weighed on the scales on the Day of Judgment. So he began with the beginning and he ended with the end. He began with the very first thing you need in doing a good deed, and he ended with the deeds being weighed on the Day of Judgment. And this is the fiqh of Al-Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala. So this is the first point that we mentioned, this particular strangeness in the hadith, and the fact that this hadith is narrated by Al-Imam al-Bukhari and Al-Imam Muslim rahimahumullah ta'ala. And we mentioned that Imam Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he begins his book with this hadith, as Imam al-Bukhari did, and as many of the scholars before them did as well. And in fact, there are several quotes of the scholars saying that the Salaf in general, the pious predecessors in general, they used to love to begin their books with this hadith. Why is it so important to begin your book with this hadith? Why is it so important to disregard the order of your book and the content of your book to put this hadith first? We said you need this hadith in every single thing that you do. And it's like Al-Imam al-Bukhari is saying, you people who read this book, Sahih al-Bukhari, when you read this book, if you want to see your reading of this book hold anything in the sight of Allah on the Day of Judgment, you need your intention to be right. And it's like he's saying, if I want this book to count anything for me on the Day of Judgment, my intention has to be right. So when you write or when you read, then you need this intention to be there for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Al-Imam ibn Rajab rahimahullah, he said, this hadith is one of the hadith upon which the whole of Islam is built. And Imam Shafi'i said, this hadith is a third of knowledge, and it is contained within or found within 70 chapters of fiqh. And Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala said, the foundations of Islam are built upon 3 hadith. This hadith of Umar, al-a'malu bin niyat, the hadith of Aisha, whoever innovates in this religion of ours something that is not from it, it will be rejected, and the hadith of An-Nu'man ibn Bashir, the halal is clear and the haram is clear. Now I just want you to stop for a moment and think, who is Al-Imam Ahmad? We have Al-Imam Shafi'i saying a third of your religion. But just bear for a second in mind, who is Al-Imam Ahmad? What is Imam Ahmad's most famous book? The Musnad. The Musnad has something like, I can't remember how many is it printed in, 40 volumes or a little bit more than that. Like, it is one of the biggest and possibly the biggest printed collection of hadith that we have. It is absolutely huge. And Imam Ahmad, it was said, had memorized over 1 million hadith. And Imam Ahmad says the whole of all of those million return to 3 hadith. Every single one of them goes back to 3 hadith. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, that your actions are according to your intentions. And the hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha, that whoever innovates something in this religion of ours will have it rejected. And the hadith of An-Nu'man ibn Bashir, the halal is clear and the haram is clear. All of them are in the 40 hadith of Imam Nawawi. But just to reflect on someone who is said has memorized alfi hadith, 1,000 by 1,000, 1 million hadith. And it's said that he has produced one of the biggest collection of narrations of the Prophet ﷺ that exists in this ummah. And certainly in terms of printed hadith, it is probably the biggest or one of the biggest printed collections of hadith that we have. And of all of that, he says, the whole of the religion is found in 3 hadith. And Imam Shafi'i supported this by saying, or preceded him by saying that this is a third of your religion. How does that work? Basically, the whole of the religion is what? Is doing what Allah has told you to do and avoiding what Allah has prohibited you to do, the halal and the haram. Where do we find this? In the hadith of An-Nu'man ibn Bashir. The whole of the religion is doing what Allah has told you to do, avoiding what Allah has made prohibited for you, and avoiding the doubtful matters. This is the whole of Islam. But that will not be accepted from you unless you have 2 things: the right intention, and that your action is according to the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is how it is a third of your religion. All of your religion is doing the halal, avoiding the haram, keeping away from doubtful matters, and you do this with the right intention and in accordance with the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that is the statement of Imam Ahmad, that the entire of the religion falls within 3 ahadith. Now we begin to look at the actual text of the hadith itself. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. First of all, Amir al-Mu'mineen Abi Hafs. Abu Hafs is the kunya of Umar ibn al-Khattab. Abu Hafs is the kunya, and the kunya is a name, like a nickname that is used for people, that is preceded for a man by Abu and for a woman by and it is essentially usually referring to their children. However, for Umar radiallahu an, Umar is an example of a kunya that does not refer to his children, because Umar did not have a child called Hafs. Abu Hafs meaning the father of Hafs, and he shares this with a number of people. Abu Bakr did not have a child called Bakr. Abu Hurairah did not have a child called Hurairah, and Al-Imam Nawawi, Abu Zakaria, did not have a child called Zakaria, because Al-Imam Nawawi died and he did not get married. It's narrated that he said, I forgot. SubhanAllah. I became busy with seeking knowledge and I forgot to get married. Allahu A'lam. But Al-Imam Nawawi was Abu Zakaria, and he did not have a child called Zakaria. And this shows you the permissibility of taking a kunya before you get married, taking a kunya that doesn't relate to your children. Say I'm Abu Abdullah and I have 3 children, Abdul Rahman and Muhammad and Ahmed, and I'm Abu Abdullah. Why not? Abu Hafs was Umar and he did not have a child called Hafs. Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu an, the second best of all of the companions after Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhuma wa ardahuma. He said, I heard, and this is particularly important in the science of hadith. He didn't learn this from another companion. He didn't take this from Abu Hurairah. He didn't learn this from Aisha. He heard the Prophet ﷺ say specifically, actions are only innama. And innama in Arabic, it means only. It doesn't just mean emphasis. It means there is no other way than this. So you can circle innama in Arabic. It's not really translated in English except for only in brackets or something like that. But innama in Arabic means al-hasr. It means there is no other thing but this. It is basically restricting what is mentioned and saying that there isn't any other way than this. Al-a'mal, actions. The scholars talk about actions in this hadith in 2 different ways. Some of the scholars, they said actions here means actions of worship. Actions of worship. Okay, so that's one opinion. That al-a'mal here, the actions here are actions of worship. But the correct opinion, or the stronger opinion, is that all actions are here. All actions are here. So we're even judged in our niyyah when we sleep and when we eat and when we go shopping, when we drink water and eat food. Are we judged by our intention? Let's see, let me put that to you guys. How can we understand? Clearly it's obvious, everyone understands if it's only referring to the actions you do to come close to Allah, as in, you know, your prayer and your salah, your siyam, your zakah, then it's clear your actions are according to your intentions. But how is it that some of the scholars widen this to include every single thing that you do? So the brother said, your intention can be made in these general actions that I'm eating, and I'm eating for the sake of becoming strong to worship Allah. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. That is an excellent answer, and that's exactly the answer that the scholars of Islam they give. That your general actions with the right niyyah are also judged according to your niyyah. So for example, if you're just drinking for the sake of drinking, Bismillah, drinking away for the sake of drinking, then you don't get any reward for that. But if you have the niyyah that I'm drinking for the sake of getting strong, for the sake of remaining healthy, so that I can worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that I don't get sick, so that I can remain strong in the worship of Allah, you will be rewarded for that drinking. Ya ikhwan, how much do we spend our time with things that have no ajr in them at all? How much are we sleep. SubhanAllah, some of us sleep for half of our lives. Some of us sleep for a third of our lives. The least of us sleep for a quarter of our lives. Add to that the time you spend in the bathroom. Add to that the time you spend eating. Add to that the time you spend, SubhanAllah, one by one. Probably 3/4 of your life, maybe more than that, is spent plus working time that you don't spend. You're talking about 95% of your life being spent outside of the ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You need to get that 95% to be part of your ibadah. How do you do it? You keep in your intention. Oh Allah, when I'm working to put food in the mouth of my family. And the Prophet ﷺ said that this is a sadaqah, an ibadah, to put food, and putting the food that you put in the wife of your mouth is sadaqah, is a charity. So you keeping in your mind this istihdar, this keeping in your mind, this what we call al-ihtisab, keeping in your mind a desire for reward or an intention to get rewarded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you go to sleep early for the sake of waking up for qiyamul layl, your whole sleep is ibadah. When you eat for the sake of being strong, for the sake of Allah, your whole eating time is ibadah. When a sister's in the house and she's cleaning the house, and she's spending that time cleaning, and you know, she's washing up and she's tidying everything up and she's ironing, she's doing all those things, she thinks, my whole day is spent in this. Where is my ajr? If you're doing this because the Prophet ﷺ said that about keeping your husband's house and about protecting and preserving your husband's household and about having responsibility for the household and about being asked about that on the Day of Judgment, then your hoovering is ibadah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not the action of hoovering that is ibadah, but it's your intention that is ibadah. So it's not the fact that sleeping is ibadah, but it's your intention when you sleep that makes your sleep ibadah. So in reality, every single action comes into this. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Actions are only by intentions. And this word binniyat, it means biniyatuha, as in, or biniyatiha, by the intentions of those actions, not the intentions of something else, but the intentions of the actions that you do. So the intention that relates to the action. And there is a missing word here, because it just says actions are by intentions, i.e. actions are rewarded by intentions, actions are judged by intentions, actions are according to intentions, actions are based on intentions, actions are considered as being valid or invalid depending on the intention. That's the missing word here, and in fact all of those words are suitable words to use. You could use any of them. Actions are judged by intentions, actions are rewarded by intentions, actions are considered to be valid or invalid depending on intentions. All of these things are contained within the Arabic. وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَّا نَوَى. And for every person, they will get the reward of what they intended. Now, some people might say this is a repetition, right? The first sentence is repeated again a different way. It's not. The two are very different, or the two are at least significantly different. The first one is saying that actions are considered to be valid or invalid depending on intention. And the second one is saying that a person's reward or a person's punishment, their great reward or the lack of their reward or the reduction of their reward, is also based on their intention. What do we mean by intention? Very important question. What do we mean by intention? What do we mean by this concept of intention? Intention means two things to two different groups of people, and for us we need both. To the scholars of Aqidah, of the creed, and the scholars of theology, and if you like the fundamentals of the religion, niyyah is the question of who you are worshipping and who you are doing your worship for. I.e., is it for Allah or is it for other than Allah? So to the scholar of Aqidah, scholar of Islamic theology, of creed, your niyyah is about who you are doing your worship for. Distinguishing between whether you're doing it for Allah or whether you're doing it for someone other than Allah. For the scholars of fiqh, niyyah is distinguishing between two different types of actions. For example, between the fard and the fard, dhuhr and asr, both are identical, right? Dhuhr and asr are both identical, whether you're traveling or whether you're not traveling. Dhuhr and asr are exactly identical, raka'ah for raka'ah. What makes dhuhr different from asr? Your intention. The difference between the fard and the sunnah, the zakah that you give and the sadaqah that you give, they're both wealth that you have and you give to the poor and the needy. What's the difference between them? Your intention. Or the difference between an aada, between a custom or a culture, and the difference between an act of worship. Like those people who maybe, for example, they keep their thawb short out of a cultural reason. I just came back from Morocco, and in Morocco everybody wears their thawb, practicing or non-practicing, above the ankle. I think if you saw a Moroccan Jew, they would have their thawb above their ankle. And there are a number of Jews in Morocco. I think they would still have their thawb above their ankle. Why is a Muslim man rewarded for having his thawb above his ankle, and that Jewish Moroccan is not rewarded for having his thawb above his ankle? The niyyah distinguishes between custom and between the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. How many women, and subhanAllah, recently I was in the Saudi embassy getting a visa. Not a nice experience. And subhanAllah, there was a lady there who was she was coming for a visa, and she was completely with her hair out, makeup, regular Western clothes. And she happened to give her ID to the lady who was serving her, and just as she passed, it was a very small office, she passed her ID. In her ID she wore full hijab. You have to ask your question, what makes these ladies in Saudi Arabia wear niqab? Women in this country wear niqab, they suffer for it, subhanAllah. Why would a woman in Saudi Arabia wear niqab? She comes to England and she puts her makeup on and her hair's all out. Because that niqab for her is a culture. It's a custom. It's got nothing to do with the deen. Say, why do you wear niqab in Saudi? Because it's aib if I don't wear niqab in Saudi. It's against our culture. But in England, no, nobody minds. It's not done for religion. So in the fuqaha, it distinguishes between customs and between religious acts. In this hadith, all of them are covered. So that your niyyah is for Allah alone, and on top of that, not only is your niyyah for Allah alone, but your niyyah in the different actions. Is it sunnah? Is it fard? Is it a custom? Is it an act of worship? That distinguishes. The niyyah that makes you get rewarded for going to sleep, that's also included within the hadith. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he gives an example to clarify this to you, to drill this example home. He gives you a clear and a concise example. He gives you the example, so whoever makes hijrah, and it's only an example. It's not saying this hadith is only relating to the hijrah. He's giving you an example that you can use to apply to whatever you do. And this is from the great methods of teaching of the Prophet ﷺ, that he gives an example to clarify what he said. So whoever's hijrah is for Allah and His Messenger, the reward, again the word isn't mentioned, but we understand from this, the reward or the action is judged or the action is interpreted or considered to be hijrah for Allah and His Messenger. And whoever their hijrah is for the sake of the dunya, money, business. I came from Makkah to Medina. Hijrah is to leave a place of insecurity and move to a place of security, or to leave from a place of disbelief and to move to a country where Islam is practiced. And hijrah will exist until the Day of Judgment. However, the hijrah that does not exist is the hijrah from Makkah to Medina. This has been cancelled out with the hijrah, with the conquest of Makkah. There is no more hijrah from Makkah to Medina, but there remains hijrah from the lands of disbelief to the lands of belief, from the places of insecurity to the places of security. The one whose hijrah, his intention was for it to be for Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then that is what he is judged as having done. That is what is recorded for him. Whoever did it for the dunya, for business or for a marriage, so he's a businessman or he's going for an engagement, then the Prophet ﷺ said his hijrah will be for what he made hijrah for. Couple of points in this. Firstly, a lot of people narrate regarding this, that this hadith is narrated regarding Qais, a person who went to marry Qais. This hadith is not authentic, so we don't say that this hadith was revealed because of a person who went from Makkah to Medina to marry Qais, as this hadith is not authentic. Why did the Prophet ﷺ go to great lengths to mention the hijrah, and to mention Allah and His Messenger, and then to mention the dunya, and to mention a woman, and then he says his hijrah is for whatever he made hijrah for? The reason he says whatever, and he doesn't say his hijrah is for the dunya, like it's not repeated like it is the first time. The first time it is Allah and His Messenger, Allah and His Messenger. Dunya, woman, whatever he made hijrah for. Two reasons. One is to take away from, or to what they call to lower, to sort of to really belittle what he's done, to really belittle and to really look at it in a foul and a terrible way, to turn around and to say whatever filthy, stupid, pathetic thing he made hijrah for, let him have it. That's the first understanding of this. It's to take away, to really, to really have some humiliation and some belittling of that reason that a person would leave such a huge ibadah, if it was for whatever he did it for. It's like you don't even mention the thing that he did it for, to belittle that individual. And the second is so that it covers more than just the dunya and more than just marriage. So it's saying that whatever he made hijrah for, the dunya, marriage, a job, a passport, whatever he made hijrah for, his hijrah is for what he made hijrah for. He gets the reward of what he made hijrah for. So this is also important. We'll just conclude very quickly our understanding of this hadith by looking at the benefits that the Shaykh mentions regarding this. First of all, he says that intention, the place of the intention is in the heart, and that speaking out the intention out loud is a bid'ah, and it is not permissible for a person to speak out the intention for any single thing that he does. We all know what we're talking about. Oh Allah, I'm standing here to pray in front of you facing the Qibla, behind this Imam to pray 4 rak'ah at the time of Dhuhr on Wednesday, seeking your face alone and in accordance with the Sunnah. We all know how it is. This is a bid'ah khabitha. It's a filthy innovation that is not from the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I saw a man in Medina, subhanallah, he missed the first rak'ah with the Imam in a prayer because he was making his intention. And he kept making a mistake, and he was doing it in Urdu. That was hashafan wa su'akila. Are you selling me bad dates and cheating me on the weight? Subhanallah, he was doing it in Urdu. Oh Allah, I'm standing in front. And he started, then, astaghfirullah. Oh Allah, I'm standing in front. And then, wallahi wa rabbil Kaaba, he missed the first rak'ah with the Imam. Subhanallah. It is not permissible for a person to mention their intention aloud except for Hajj and Umrah, because there is a sunnah in this. And even in Hajj and Umrah, it's not permissible for them to say, oh Allah, I'm making Hajj to the Kaaba, going to travel on the Medina road from Dhul Hulayfa, and I'm going to make my intention, and I'm going to wear my ihram, and I'm not going to cut my nails, and I'm not going to cut my hair, and this is not permissible. But for him to say, Labbaik Allahumma Umrah, oh Allah, I answer your call making Umrah, oh Allah, I answer your call making Hajj, oh Allah, I answer your call making Hajj and Umrah together. This is the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and there is no other action in this that is it is permissible for them to do. From the benefits that the Prophet the Shaykh took from the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is, first of all, that there is no action that is considered or accepted in Islam without intention. Second of all, that actions are considered and are judged and are rewarded by the intention. Thirdly, that the reward of the person who is doing his action is going to be given to him on a level according to what he intended. He may get nothing, he may get something, he may get everything. Fourth, the use of examples to teach people. Fifth, the virtue of the hijrah, because the Prophet ﷺ used it as an example, and it is mentioned in Sahih Muslim from the hadith of Amr ibn al-As radiyallahu anhu that the Prophet ﷺ said, do you not know that Islam removes or wipes out what came before it, and that the hijrah wipes out what came before it, and that the hajj wipes out what came before it? The sixth benefit that the Shaykh mentions is that a person is either rewarded or is given sin or falls into haram or is prohibited from some good because of their intention. Seventh, or that the intention is according to or is including within that are the means that you do to achieve something. So that the means you do to achieve something must be permissible. And also that includes that it must be in accordance with the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that it's not just enough for a person to have a good intention, and this is going to come in the later hadith. And it's also included in this that something which is at a level of mere permissibility, at a basic level of permissibility, can become an act of worship by having this ihtisab, by thinking of the reason behind it. And finally the Shaykh says that that one single action a person does, only one single action that a person does, it holds a reward for that individual. One tiny little thing, but it holds a huge amount of reward or a huge amount of sin in it. And this is something that we also benefit from the hadith. So this concludes our explanation of the first hadith.